Hello and welcome to our File Sync webinar. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. So as Misty said, my name's Gary Edwards. I'm one of the Solution Line Directors here at GRAITEC. And for the next 30 minutes, we have the pleasure of presenting to you our File Sync product. So we're going to cover some of the industry challenges around data integration. We're then going to have a quick look at some of the use cases. Why would our customers buy File Sync? I'll then pass you over to my colleague Stuart, who's going to do a short demonstration. And as Misty mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll do our best to try and get round. If we can't, then we'll obviously reach out afterwards. So you may have seen this slide before. And what this shows is over the last few years, there's been a meteoric rise in software applications available in the industry today. Now, this has been great because it gives us the tools that we need to do the job. But on the other side, it causes us a bit of a challenge because data and files can become siloed and it can become difficult to access this information, especially if we haven't purchased enough licenses to give to everybody in the organization just to get access to our data. Now, when you look at some of these industry challenges today, you know, the physical impact that a lack of data integration and file collaboration is having, some of these stats are quite alarming. We can see that 54% of construction projects experience delays down to poor integration. We can see that 52% of construction professionals cite that a lack of real-time data is a major hurdle into making those effective decisions. And roughly 20% is the average decrease in productivity resulting from insufficient data and file collaboration. That's why at GRAITEC we have invested heavily in a new solution line called Data Connect. Okay, so today is all about File Sync, but I'm going to do a quick plug on ERP Sync because for us it's all about connecting systems and data. Now, for all of you on here today, if you use the Autodesk Construction Cloud and are thinking or using the cost management module, you may want to sync that to your ERP accounting software and vice versa. And this application does exactly that. But as mentioned, today is focusing on File Sync, and we underpin these applications with our integration services. There may not be a solution out there readily available for you. You may have some data bottlenecks. You may have some challenges moving data from one place to another. So our team is here to help understand those and potentially provide solutions around that. So let's take a look at File Sync. Why do our customers purchase File Sync? Well, we break it down to four key pillars. We look at migrating data. We look at collaborating with data. We look at backing up our data. And we look at compliance. Now, if we delve into migrate of data, what do we mean by that? Well, a really good example is you've just purchased the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Okay, you've got a lot of data sat there on your server or wherever it may be located, and you want to get maybe all of it or certain amounts of that data into ACC. Okay, but you don't want to do that manually. You've got a large volume of data. You know it's going to be time consuming, matching up the folders and ensuring the files have come across correctly. Whereas really some customers want to automate that process. Now, when it comes to collaboration, we have customers that often struggle in this arena. Why? Well, because still to this day, email is the most common means of communication. You know, so these fragmented email communication channels cause us some issues. Now, we saw earlier that there's many different systems out there, you know, and sometimes it can be difficult accessing files. You know, does everybody have a license in order to access that file? Or are you using other business systems and need to get files from one to another? We often see when customers are collaborating with files that they have challenges around version control. And we know that if we're looking at the wrong version, it's going to lead to confusion. So how do we ensure that all stakeholders, whether they're internal or external, is looking at the right information at the right time? Backing up our data. Now, a lot of our conversations is centralized around backing up our data. Okay, now how do you currently manage your backups across a multitude of different data sources, right? What do you do when your cloud storage potentially goes down? And we all know from time to time, whilst cloud storage is very reliable, there's no 100% guarantee that it's always going to be up. So when it goes down, what do? Do you have that latest backup to work to so that you can continue working? And if you're currently doing manual backups, or your backup solution isn't as robust as it could be, then there's an increase in a risk of data loss. When was that last backup taken? What was backed up? Do we always have that latest backup there? Should we need it? And then finally, we've got compliance. How do you ensure that your teams are working to some of the industry standards, such as ISO 19650? There could be an element in there which dictates the way you have to share and collaborate on files. More importantly, how do you demonstrate adherence to regulatory requirements? Can you quickly produce an audit? Do you have those reports readily available to show when needed? And then how do you control the file access? How do you control file sharing within your organization? So we have those 4 key pillars there, whether you want to migrate that data into a new ACC environment, whether you want to collaborate internally or externally. Do you need to improve your backups? Do you need to get a copy of all of your data out of ACC or Procore, for example, and put it into SharePoint? And then we've got compliance. And that's really where we come with File Sync. So our solution File Sync is all about easily and quickly connecting and authenticating your storage systems. And then setting up a configuration. Do you want to sync on demand? Do you want to set up hourly, daily? Do you want to run it overnight? Our software does the heavy work. Let File Sync do the synchronization so you can spend more time on other tasks, activities. And then we've talked about the backup. Always having that peace of mind because you've got the latest backup. We support a wide range of systems today, from Autodesk Construction Cloud, BIM 360, SharePoint, OneDrive, Procore, even standard Windows environments, and this will continue to grow. Now, the benefits are quite clear. We're connecting these systems together. We're reducing that arduous task of remembering the passwords, having to continually upload, log in, find the file, folder, etc. We're improving the process. So there's process automation. We're improving the collaboration internally and externally. And if it's important, we're helping to improve some of the compliance where you can take a quick look at what's going on. So before I pass you over to Stuart, I just want to run a quick poll. Misty, if you wouldn't mind firing up the poll for me, just to get a bit of interaction from the audience there, really to see, of the 4 instances that we mentioned, sorry, Misty, not that one, the other one, of the 4 instances that we mentioned, which one's important? Migrate, collaborate, backup, or compliance? There we go. Thank you very much. So you'd all like to just say it's good to see the interaction, and it gives us a good feel for some of those use cases and seeing what's important to you. Thank you very much. So with that said, I'd like to pass you over to my colleague Stuart Smith, who's going to shortly run through a live demonstration of the application. You can see how intuitive this system is to use, how user-friendly it is, and how it performs some of those tasks we've just discussed. Stuart?
Thanks, Gary. So Gary's talked about some of the challenges that customers face around working with files. So we've got a couple of examples framed around these challenges. The first of which we're going to look at is migrate. So in this example, we need to migrate a project from SharePoint to Autodesk Docs. Part of the customer's requirement is this needs to be run after hours. They don't want to impact users on their day-to-day workings. the last point is part of the example is we want to sync new and modified files from SharePoint to Autodesk Docs. So it could be that we've got weeks or potentially months where users are going to be transitioning over to this new platform. So any new data they create or modify in SharePoint needs to be synced across. So we'll go through how we can achieve this in File Sync. Before we do that, I'm just going to bring up a couple of windows. So the windows that we've got on screen, on the left, we've got SharePoint. And this is the project that I need to migrate. On the right, I've got Autodesk Docs, and this is the project that I want to migrate to. And we're going to do that with File Sync. So the File Sync application, as Gary mentioned, really straightforward, simple to use. It's a 3-step process to get up and running with this application. The first thing that we would do is create a connection. So you create connections to the systems that you want to share data with. So all we're doing here is just following a real simple, intuitive authentication system, choosing the platform, entering our credentials. So if you're familiar with the Construction Cloud, Autodesk Construction Cloud, the login is very much the same. We authorize our app to access data, and in the case of Autodesk, we choose the hub that we want to connect to. So really simple to get connected. That will then create a connection based on the name of the system and the hub that we're connecting to. We can amend these details as we need. And you can see that in this example, we've already got some connections created for various platforms. So we've got Procore, SharePoint, OneDrive, and a couple of connections to different Autodesk Construction Cloud hubs. So the second step is we need to create a project. So a project is like a workspace. It's just somewhere for us to store the different sync configurations. So we want to migrate some data from SharePoint to ACC. And one of the requirements is we needed to be able to run this out of hours. So we can automate syncs by scheduling. We can specify the days that we want them to run on. We can specify the time that we want it to run. So part of the requirement was we didn't want to impact the user experience on either platforms. So I could run this in the early morning, and I want it to run every 24 hours. So with that project in place, we then create a sync. So all a sync is our configuration. Where are we going from? Where are we going to? And what do we want it to do? So we choose our connection, which is SharePoint. We then choose the project that we want to work with. And if there's a specific folder within that directory, we can choose it. So we already know that we want this project. And once we've chose our connection and our project, we can then choose our settings. So things like including all the subfolders of that particular project. We then repeat that process at the destination. So we choose our connection, which is Autodesk. We're choosing the project. And again, if we have a specific location, where do we want it to go to? And we have our copy options. So one of the requirements was we need to be able to copy files that are modified or new, and we can choose that as a copy option. And that's it. So we've got 3 steps: create the connection, your project, create your sync, and you're ready to go. So whilst we could wait for the schedule to run at 1 AM, we can also run it on demand. So on the left, we've got File Sync. On the right, we've got Autodesk Docs. And if I just click on this play button, it will run the sync on demand. Now, we can monitor the activity of a sync in real time. We have an activities page. So it's just a real-time ticker. It's showing us all the tasks it's performing. So checking the source directory, looking at what folders and files exist, checking the destination. So it's also checking to see if there's already data there. Does it match what's at the source? And once it's performed those checks, it starts building the folder structure and copying the files. And we can see that happening in real time. So we have the real time activity, but we can also see this also being done in Autodesk Docs. So once it's complete, we'll get a notification, which you won't see in the demo. It's on a separate screen, but we also have feedback within this activity. It's telling us that it's finished and it's processed 32 files. So one of the things we talked about that was a requirement from this customer is they've still got people working in SharePoint. It's going to take potentially days, weeks before all the users transition to Docs. So anything that's new or modified needs to be reflected in Autodesk Construction Cloud, Autodesk Docs. So I'm going to add some new files to SharePoint. And now we've got those new files. We can see this change. What a folder at the destination is empty. So back in File Sync. So one of the questions we get asked when we're showing File Sync is, if we are running syncs multiple times, is it going to synchronize everything? And that's just down to your settings essentially. So as long as we've got incremental activated, when we go to run this job, which we'll do now, it's only going to copy files that are new or modified. It won't copy all the files again, although it is an option if we need it to be. So same as before, it's going to check the destination, check the source. It'll see if there are any files that match, any folders that match, and if they do, are there any differences? If they're exactly the same, it's going to this time skip all the files that match and then upload or update the files that are modified or new. So you'll find that this shoots through this time because it's skipping everything and it's uploading 2 files. And yeah, that's complete. And we can see within Autodesk Docs, those 2 documents have been uploaded. So we've been able to migrate a project from SharePoint to ACC. We've been able to run the migration after hours to minimize any impact on the users. And we've been able to facilitate syncing new or modified files from SharePoint to ACC, which just makes sure that anyone that's still transitioning to that new platform is able to push that data and share it with people that are working in Docs. So the second use case or example is around collaboration. So we'll use the same project that we just created. In this example, we need to share specific documents. So instead of the entire project, we want to be more targeted about what we're sharing. And we need to share it with a stakeholder who is utilizing Procore. Similar to before, we need to sync files, but we need to do it way more frequently. So it's as frequently as possible, we want that data to be made available to that stakeholder. And the stakeholder is also asking for better visibility of changes. So he needs to be able to see when a file's been modified, they need to get that across and they need visibility of those changes. And again, we can facilitate that in File Sync. So as before, we've got a couple of windows on the screen. So on the left, we've got Autodesk Docs. As I say, we want to be a bit more targeted this time. So we're going to be syncing the documents folder and we're going to be syncing it to this Procore destination. We have this subcontractor folder. So we're going to upload to this destination, and we're going to do that with File Sync. Same as before, we can create a project. And we're going from ACC to Procore. And we're going to schedule it. Now this time, the start time doesn't matter. We just wanted to share that data with them as frequently as possible. So I want to start it right now. And I want to do the syncs as frequently as possible. So we have the ability to run that interval at 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, it's going to keep looking for files and then syncing them across. So same as before, we can create a sync. So I'm just going to maximize the screen again. We choose our source. As I say, this time we want to be a little bit more targeted about what we're syncing. So we want this documents folder, but we want everything underneath this documents folder. So we can include subfolders, and then we choose our destination, choose our project, and then choose where we want it to go to. Now in this example, the stakeholder needs visibility of changes, so we can enable versioning. So this isn't creating multiple copies of files at the destination. This will maintain one file and version it at the destination. So they can look at that file and see all of the changes. So with versioning enabled, ready to go. As before, we could wait for the schedule to kick in, or we can just run it on demand. So on the left, we've got our file sync, which we're going to run. And the same as before, we can use that activity log to view what's happening. So similar to before, she's checking the source, checking the destination, and then it starts uploading the files. So if I just refresh Procore, we'll see that the files have been copied across all of the folders and the files within those folders. So we've been able to successfully do that sync to collaborate with that customer. We're doing it on a regular 15-minute interval. So one of the big requirements from that stakeholder was visibility of change. So back inside of Autodesk Docs, I'm going to update some files. So we can see they're currently at version 1. So let's just drop some new files in. We're going to update them. So I have some pre-prepared documents. And we'll see that this will refresh, and we're now at version 2. So at our source, we've made a change, we've updated these files. So if we bring File Sync back up and run this again, we'll clear the activity log. And same as before, it's going to do the same checks. It's going to look at the source and destination. It's going to see if there's any differences. And if there are any differences, it's going to either copy the file or it's going to update and version it. So we can see, as before, it's skipped 8 files and it's updated 2. If we take a look at Procore, we'll just refresh that again. Let's take a document. And oops. And you'll see that if we go to the info, we can see we're at version 2. And we can see in quick succession, so within 2 minutes of one another, we had version 1 uploaded, then version 2. So we've given that customer the ability to be able to access and view each of the changes that we're making. So we're giving them visibility of changes. So we've been able to share specific documents, targeted documents, sync them frequently, and give that stakeholder visibility of change. So in the third example, we want to be able to back up. So we want to back up a cloud project to a Windows system. Part of the requirement for this example is the customer needs to filter out anything that they deem as unnecessary files from that backup process. And they want to ensure that backup is an exact match of what they see in the cloud project. They don't want any additional files or any additional folders. So as you know, files and folders come and go within projects, the structures change. They just want it to be an exact match. And we can achieve that in File Sync. So as before, let's just bring up the docs once more. So in the left, we've got docs, and I just wanted to show you one particular folder. So we've got, and as you see in many projects, we've got a directory full of zip files. So these are some of the unnecessary files that I don't want. So I want to do a backup of my docs. I want to put it to a mapped drive or a network share, and I want to get rid of anything that's unnecessary. So it could be large files or overly large files or zip files. Now I'm going to be backing up to this mapped drive. And the same at my destination, we can see that the structure doesn't really match. There's files and folders that don't conform with what's in this project. So we want to clean this data up during the backup process. And we can do that with File Sync. So let's create a new project. Again, we could do a schedule. We could specify when we want it to run, just to automate that process. We want it to be frequently backing up any new modified files once we've done that first backup. We're going to create a sync. So we're going from ACC. And regardless of the connection we're using, it's always the same process. The interface isn't changing based on the connection that you're using. So it's always consistent and easy to understand. We're going to include everything within that project. Now we talked about we need to filter out unnecessary files. We have the ability to filter files. So I could sync specific files. So we have categories and we have file types. So I can pick the file types that I want to sync. Or in this example, I want to exclude certain file types. So again, we have categories. Maybe it's a specific type of file, or maybe it's an entire category of file types. So we can choose that. And this is customizable. You can add your own categories. You can add your own file types. We could even skip files. If we knew we had some really big files that we don't want to bring across, we don't see them as necessary, we could put that in place. We just choose our destination. We're going to go to our mapped drive and select our folder. And we talked about it needs to be an exact match. One of the options we have is to delete files not found in source. So what this means is when we run this sync, or when it is automated, it's going to check the destination, check the source. Anything that doesn't match, it's going to clean those files up. So let's run this now. So we've got our backup location on the right with the existing structure and files. If we start this job as before, it does the same thing, performing the checks between the source and destination based on the parameters that we've chosen in that sync. And once it's completed its preliminary checks, it's going to then start performing the task. So you'll find that it's going to clean these folders and files up, and that's already done. It's created the new structure, and it's copied the new files to my Windows backup location. And that's complete. And if we remember, this BIM folder had zip files, and you can see all the zip files have been excluded from that backup. So we've been able to back our cloud project up to Windows. We've been able to filter out anything that's unnecessary, and we've been able to ensure that the backup reflects the current cloud project structure. The third one is a quick one. It's compliance. So, when we speak to customers, they need to be able to track the history of what they're doing. They're finding it difficult to be able to show what they've done when it comes to sharing data or for their own compliance purposes. And when we speak to them, they need a way to be able to go back to the history of what they've been sharing and examine it in more detail. And also, we find that people want to be able to potentially leverage this data to visualize on other platforms like Power BI. So we can do that in File Sync. To some extent, you've seen the activity log, which gives us a real-time ticker of what's going on. But we also have a logs page. So logs will show you every sync that's ever occurred for every project. We've got the ability to filter this down, so we can filter down to specific projects. We can filter down to specific syncs for a project and view all of the logs, or we can just see everything. We have a traffic light system, so if there are any errors, it's going to show us. It shows us the size of the package, where it went from and to, the folders, how long it took, when it was run. And if I select it, it will also show us a log in the bottom half. So in that log, it will give us the ability to filter. So it might be the case that we've run into errors. We could filter down to show us the errors, or we want to look at what files were skipped or what files were uploaded. And we can do that. So we can essentially boil it down to what we really care about. And all of the logs are created in JSON format. And if I select it, it will preview it within Microsoft Edge. So we could use these logs in another platform to visualize this data in another way. And at the same time, we can point another platform to our logs folder, which they could use to visualize all of that data. And the only other thing I wanted to point out is with all of these use cases, it's for every connection. So we support several systems, and regardless of the system, whether it's Windows, Procore, OneDrive, SharePoint, BIM 360, Autodesk Docs, you can perform any of these examples, whether you're migrating, collaborating, backup and complying. It's all use cases for every connection.
Thanks, Stuart. I think I'm back in. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Now that brings us near to the end of our session today. So it's a short, sharp session, but hopefully it gives a good opportunity to see the File Sync application, how intuitive it is to use, and whether or not you can relate it back to any of those 4 use cases that we discussed today. We've had quite a few questions on the chat, which has been great. I've been going through and answering them. But if anybody does have any further questions, please reach out to us. We are also offering a free trial of GRAITEC File Sync. So you should be able to see a link there on the screen. This is a 15-day trial. So a couple of little restrictions in place in terms of number of files, projects, etc. that you can move about, but a really nice way to get your hands on the software and have a go. As I mentioned, the system really is intuitive, so you should be able to just easily download this and have a go yourselves. So please feel free to click on that link. We'll also send it out to everybody that's sat on. Now, we've had quite a few people sit in today, which has been great. I'm going to ask Misty just to put up the last poll question, and that's really whether or not you would like us to reach out to you in the coming days, just to see if you want any more questions, if you want to know anything about pricing or anything like that. So if you would like us to discuss this further with you, you might want to show some colleagues, or you might just want your own demonstration just to delve in a little bit deeper, then feel free just to let us know on the poll, and we'll do get round to you in the coming days and go through it with yourselves. Good, and that brings us to an end. So I'd like to thank you once again for all attending. Hopefully it's been worthwhile your time, and we look forward to potentially speaking to you in the future around File Sync.